He is Bob Pollock. Penn State Extension joins us this morning, and we're glad he did because we've got questions for him today. Our visit presented by Marcus & Mack, voted best law firm and best personal injury lawyer 3 years in a row in the Best of Indiana County contest. Visit them online, marcusandmack.com. So you have seen the pictures of the molehills that I was talking about last week that literally have turned into mountains. The molehills have turned into mountains.
Yeah, those are big.
And
they almost look like fire ant hills. They're so big.
They are, and numerous. They keep popping up. So, I mean, what to do with things like that? Is it just a matter of smoothing them out and hoping they move on?
Yeah, you almost need a bulldozer as big as those are. Level things back around again.
Something else. Man, oh, man. But the grass always survives over those areas. It's amazing to me that with that much damage being done from underneath, grass is really resilient, isn't it?
For the most part, it is. Yeah, it'll, and they're not really disturbing a very wide path. When you look at those mounds of soil, a couple of those were 9 or 10 inches tall.
Yeah.
Which is bigger than normal. I said the soil looked real nice, though, like river bottom soil. You don't want to lose that. That's valuable stuff there.
That's really good.
But, yeah, they're making a trail. They're heaving that up, but just, in about a 4 or 5 inch wide swath. Mm-hmm. But they do that multiple places. So, a lot of times it's still moist in there, and they maybe have gone through, they may not have disturbed all the roots, or destroyed all the roots. So those roots can still, you can level that back down again, and you still might get, some of those roots don't die. So therefore the grass isn't going to die either in those spots.
When you have areas such as that, when there's a lot of dirt on top of the surface, is it necessary to reseed? And when will people begin to think about reseeding their lawns when the cold weather breaks and it's time to start thinking about getting outside again?
Usually once we get towards the end of March into early April, we can start to do that. I mean, you could go out and overseed now, and we probably used to do this maybe a little bit more, but where we'd rely on those freeze and thaw cycles. So just, the temperature goes down below freezing, that expands, and, as long as there's moisture in the soil, then that soil will expand and contract as it freezes and thaws. Mm-hmm. And so you can go and overseed and just, sow the seed on top of the ground and let that freezing and thawing.
The ground will actually grab it.
Yes, it'll grab it. It'll work it down in there enough, and then that's all you have to do with it. So, you can put seed on now, but that seed will wait, till it gets the temperature conditions and moisture. It can have the moisture, but if it doesn't have the temperature, it still won't germinate. And it'll germinate when it's time. When the ground warms up enough, it'll do that. So, you can start to do some of those repair things and work ahead a little bit if you want to.
Speaking of seeds, we've visited this topic before in past years. In the wintertime, folks love to feed the birds. And they've got their bird feeders that come in all kinds of different mixes and blends of seed. And there are byproducts of the birds eating all those seeds as they spread around the seeds that they eat. Some of those are thistle seeds, which means your lawn ends up with some nice thorny thistles that you got to dig out in the springtime. Is that how all of those thistles proliferate? I know if you let them get to seed head, that the wind is going to blow them around. But
right.
Do birds propagate that a good bit as well?
I mean, they can help with that. Yes, definitely
help.
Relative term. But if they eat the seed and digest that, that seed's no longer going to be viable to germinate and grow. It's the ones that, pecking through all the seeds there, if they miss some, then those are the ones that tend to germinate and, grow into another thistle. But if they've processed that, and got their food value out of it and digested it enough, then, it's going to destroy that seed and that particular one won't grow.
Yeah.
But that, they may not completely do that. Some seeds are easier to digest than others. Some of those real fine, small seeds are going to break down a lot quicker, have a thinner seed coat than other seeds. So they might get some value out of that, but not completely process that all. Mm-hmm. And other animals do that, too. They eat various forages with seeds in, or they, and they don't completely digest that. Mm-hmm. And so then it passes through.
And it's naturally fertilized.
And it has other nutrients along with it. And so those things get spread around and they can grow new plants,
Yeah.
Of course, any plant where we don't want it, call it a weed.
Speaking of weeds, in the fall, of course, I know you're a big advocate of doing your weeding and feeding then, but people will do that in the springtime.
Oh, yeah.
And it's perfectly valid to do it in the springtime. If you have a particularly troublesome and one of those types of weeds that really multiplies quickly and overtakes a yard or a patch of your yard, eradicating that can be really, really difficult. What are the methods that we should use for that? Is it do you pull the stuff up, or do you just spread some weed and feed on it, and the weed killer in there is going to take care of it?
It's good to figure out what the weed is, mm-hmm. which then helps us decide whether it's an annual or perennial, a biennial. A biennial would be dandelion, as an example. Grows a root system and plant the first year, and then it flowers the second year. Mm-hmm. So it can germinate in the fall, have a green plant, and then the next spring or summer flower and go back to seed again and then die. So figure out what type of plant we have and what kind of root system it has, and then how it spreads. So you have creeping Charlie or ground ivy that is a perennial. It doesn't even die back in the winter. It'll still be green like the grass in the winter. It might fade a little bit, but, and then that thing propagates by pieces too. So pulling it, we can get some of that out, mm-hmm. but any fragments we leave there will grow a new plant.
Yeah.
Canada thistle's another one that's like that. Even dandelion, you can get down in the ground and chip at that, use a prong and get down in and, cut a good portion of the root system off. But if you mark that and go back, in a couple of weeks, that plant will have regenerated and from the root system that's left. So some of those perennials are more challenging to get rid of. Dock is another one that has a big, fleshy root system like a turnip, mm-hmm. and can be, you got to dig up a big chunk, and then it'll have little side roots and stuff too, down in the ground, that if you don't get those, you'll see those perk up again. So kind of knowing, and after a while we can recognize what these plants are and the challenging ones, because we've tried to dig that Canada thistle out of the ground for 4 years, and we think we get it all, and yet there it is. It still comes back. So having a kind of a multi-pronged approach to dealing with those. So treating a lot of perennials, if we treat them in the fall, late summer, early fall, mm-hmm. that's kind of the best time to try and knock them back and really suppress them or kill them, because they're pulling root reserves. So they're making energy and putting that down in the root system. And so if we get an herbicide on then that will allow that to be taken into the plant, moved into the root system, and we get a lot better kill on that plant for a longer period of time, versus a spring treatment only, that all the energy in that plant has been stored in that root system. Now it's all pushing upward, to grow new growth for the season. And so we get a lot less activity, moving back into the root system. So we might kill the top off, but we don't kill the root off.
Mm. Have the droughts of the last couple of years, particularly last summers, have they changed the character, the nature of our lawns?
We can, probably in the sense that, yeah, that dry weather, and if we don't get enough moisture, that can stress the lawn. I mean, they can respond by trying to go dormant. They'll just cut back. They won't put on new growth. They'll just kind of sit there, and they can also, the color will change, and they might even start to go, light brown in color. But just trying to preserve themselves. So that period of stress, yes. And if it's long enough, then we can get patches dying out. You can have species, some of the species that are in there, the species mix in the yard, between fescues and bluegrass.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Ryegrass, yes. So some of those are more tolerant or more sensitive to those conditions. And so you can have some of those species fade out, and then the other ones are left to survive and then try to fill in.
Yeah. And of course, if they're late summer grasses or early bloomer grasses, then all of that becomes a whole different thing. And a lawn might be composed of a whole different personality now than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, and the more aggressive varieties, or the ones that are more able to adapt to those varying conditions, will survive and spread and fill in and take over for where some of those less adaptable species were.
I would guess that you and Extension have papers and sections of the Extension website that really talk about lawn.
Yes.
And making it as pretty as you can and putting up with all of the various things that attack a lawn?
There is, yes.
All right, then. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com. Are you predicting the Super Bowl for this weekend? Do you look and see how many Penn State guys are on each roster, and then those are the ones that you root for? So you're a big Saquon guy?
Oh, yeah, I am. I like watching him run.
So you're going to Eagles simply because Saquon's there?
I might do that, yeah. I might lean that way.
Well, we understand.
Pennsylvania team, too.
Yeah, but it's Philadelphia. Is that really Pennsylvania?
I know. It's a stretch. But
it's the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160.
If quality is what you're looking for, then Arone Lumber and Hardware Home Center is the place for you. If superior products are what you're looking for, then Arone Lumber and Hardware Home Center is the place for you. And if expertise is important to you, then Arone Lumber and Hardware Home Center is the place for you. Arone Lumber and Hardware will guide you every step of the way from design to finished product. And if you can't come to them, they'll come to you. Talk to the professionals in building and remodeling. Arone Lumber and Hardware Home Center, Luzerne Road, Homer City. Dedicated to quality. Dedicated to you.
Working 9 to 5 and need car repairs? It's tough when your mechanic keeps